Keep trekking. It's not just a channel, it's an adventure. So get your boots on and come with us. It's worth the journey, experiencing your local landscape, breathing the air this ancient land has to offer. So let's go.
Welcome to Keep Trekking, welcome back if there's been a fuller. Today we're in a very special place in North Derbyshire.
Eyam.
Or Eyam. Eyam.
Or whichever way you want to spell it really.
E-Y-A-M. I think it's Eyam.
Yeah. So if you're plagued with thoughts, this is the place to be.
You have to start on dad jokes.
Yep.
We're in the car park opposite Eyam Museum. Now it's not open at the moment, but apparently it's worth a visit. It tells the whole story about the plague and what went off in this village in the years of 1665 and 1666. Yep. We shall get around the village and get more info and information about the plague and what they did and what the villagers put themselves through and things. So we're going to crack on. Let's get around the village.
So here we have the first water supply in this country. It was the troughs are so called because the nearby Bradshaw Hole, they form part of a series of troughs established in 1558, many of which still remain, providing water for domestic as well as agricultural use. Their use was confirmed by the Eyam Enclosure Act of 1803. The system is said to be one of the first public water suppliers in the country. They supplied regular domestic water for nearly 350 years.
Across the road is what we call the Burnham Cottage. And part of this cottage is the oldest inhabited house in the village. As you can see at the back how old that is. So definitely witness buildings these, which will probably hold the fabric of its stone. Memories and possibly some wee ghosties. In front of me is the brick house. It's the only one in Eyam. All the other houses are made of stone, but this one's actually made of brick. And it's a Grade 2 listed building, and it was once called the Stag's Parlour, and it was a pub. Even the railings are listed. Here at the back of me we have Eyam Hall. Now this was built in the 17th century. I think they just finished building it as the plague hit. Now all the rich landowners in this area, including the people that lived here, fled the village and left the inhabitants to their fate. Typical to be fair.
Festival of Britain 1951, Carnival Day. Since then there's been a sheep roast every year. So this is the contraption behind me where they cook it, and they do it every year, part of a festival. So come and get your lamb and have a jam.
Behind me is the wee cottage where the plague started in 1665. A small bundle of cloth was sent from London. The guy was a tailor, and his assistant George Vickers hung the cloth out to dry because it turned up and it was damp. Unknown to him, he was bitten by a flea, which obviously contained the bubonic plague, and he was the first victim to die. 7th of September 1665. Edward Cooper, Jonathan Cooper, Alexander Cooper all died. Mary Cooper was the only survivor of this family, but unfortunately she lost 13 of her relatives. As the Great Plague spread from that cottage, went to household to household. Behind me is Rose Cottage, where the Thorpe family lived. Every single one of those died, not one survived. Completely tragic. This is the Bagshaw house, where the Siddall family once lived. Now this is a very tragic story within the story of Eyam. The first victim here was Richard, age 11. The entire family died. Elizabeth Bagshaw's husband died, and 9 months, and she remarried, quickly remarried, and 9 months later her then husband died as well. They're saying that there was a Joseph Siddall, age 3, was the only one that survived. Now we're going to enter the church that played a massive part within the story of Eyam.
We don't know what to say to you, pal, because
No.
hard as that. Went through it without Ash.
Yeah.
You just can't tell.
No. He's
She moved back out. 2 weeks after leaving mine, she split up with her boyfriend. So she then ended up going.
she reckons.
Now, they not long since appointed a new vicar, or priest, I think he was a vicar at this place, called a William Mompesson. The previous vicar was called Thomas Stanley, and this is a memorial to Thomas Stanley. Now, the reason they replaced Thomas Stanley was he was a Protestant, but he wasn't an Anglican. So they got William Mompesson in. Now, William Mompesson got the villagers together and persuaded them, with the support of Mr. Stanley, to remain and isolate themselves off, cut themselves off from the rest of the world, basically. So basically, there was the first lockdown.
Yeah.
And he took his congregation away from this church to a clearing. I forgot what, something cut now, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And he took them outside, so there was in the congregations within their own families, and that's where he put the idea across. Didn't say you have to, but he persuaded them to isolate and cut themselves off. The near village used to leave parcels of food and things at certain points around the edge of the village, and the people from this village, they didn't want payment for it, but the people of the village wanted to pay their way, even though they was going through what they was going through. So they used to soak the coins, the money, in vinegar and leave the coins and then collect the parcels once they'd been dropped off. So another poignant story, but if it wasn't for this guy and the support of the vicar previously, they got their heads together, even though they probably clashed at the beginning, saved thousands of lives from spreading throughout the rest of the country. Hats off to these two guys. But the villagers, what a brave thing to do, what a brave act.
It is, and if you think of the lockdowns that we've had, and the fact that it was COVID, these guys were dealing with the plague.
Yeah, I mean, it was certain death.
Certain death. And to lock themselves off, technically, was a big thing.
Very brave act of selfless act.
Yeah.
Because to save other lives, they put their own lives.
They did.
At risk. Now, Mr. Mompesson, William Mompesson, the vicar here at the time, he sent his children and he wanted to send his wife away, but his children went, but his wife decided to stay. Unfortunately, in August the 25th, 1666, she also succumbed to the Great Plague. This is the tomb, or the little, of Catherine Mompesson, the vicar's wife, died of the plague, August 25th, 1666. Now, during the time of the plague with the deaths, it was forbidden, or they agreed not to bury the dead altogether, so the families came up with an agreement that they would all bury their own dead. Imagine that. You're surviving, your whole family, your wife, your children, your husbands, your cousins, your uncles, whatever, and you're having to take them and bury them on a daily basis, really, and you are surviving. A few years ago they did a test on the survivors, relatives, ancestors, and it came that the ones they tested had a certain gene in their makeup that they could never ever catch the plague, because they were wondering why they were survivors of this massive, horrible death. And like I said, they tested the survivors of the plague, you know, the ancestors, and they had this certain gene in their genetic makeup. Amazing. Mompesson's Well. Now that's one of the land boundaries that I was talking about, when they used to leave money for the villagers next door and the surrounding villages to leave parcels and food. This school was built in 1877, as you can see, but on the gates there's the nursery rhyme of a ring a roses. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, I'm sure you have. Ring a roses, a pocket full of posies, a tissue, we all fall down. That song is written about the Great Plague, the Black Death, the bubonic plague. This building in front of me used to be called the Foresters Arms. It used to be a pub, but it was built on top of the graveyard
I'm going to bet how long you last.
that dates back to the time of the plague. But fortunately, when the building was erected, the gravestones were all smashed up and taken away.
Neil on Twinkly Rock a little. Done toward that.
John Toer's house. Unfortunately, another sad victims.
11, 12, do they?
John, Jeffrey, and his wife survived. So young. Another poignant place of the village, Miners Croft. Here in this bit of wasteland is where a lot of graves was. Many of the victims who lived on the edge of the village was buried here, and the memorial stones have been removed, and a lot was inscribed with the letter H. These people died, but they didn't really remove the letter H. I think all they did was just paint it yellow. Sad joke, I know. But the Miners Arms Croft, another sad reminder. Wesleyan Reformed Chapel, built in 1787. There's also Thomas Stanley, the Reverend that was replaced by Mr. Mompesson, but he was persuaded to stay in the village to help the sick and dying, but he didn't live much longer. He died in 1670. Oh dear. He lasted 4 years after the plague. Reverend Thomas Stanley. And that's the old chapel. These buildings could talk. What they've witnessed. The Riley graves on the edge of the Eyam village. This is one of the most saddest and poignant places within Eyam, as far as I'm concerned. On the 3rd to the 10th of August 1666, Mrs. Hancock buried 6 of her children here and her husband within 8 days. She moved to Sheffield after that, and it was years later one of her ancestors came back and put the gravestones to commemorate the deaths. Let's have a quick look inside. This one's to Alice Hancock, to the 6 children, and then I presume that the big one in the middle is for her husband. Very poignant place indeed, very sad. All within the space of 6-8 days. Very sad indeed. tell you a wee story. Now I don't remember names. It was just a story that I heard. There was a young lady that lived in the village of Eyam, and she used to be in love with a guy from the neighbouring village. They used to meet in secret at a secret cove just outside the village. Obviously kept the distance. They used to meet every other day, I believe, until one day she never turned up, and obviously wondered if she was okay. But when the plague had passed and the lockdown had finished, the quarantine had finished, he went to Eyam in search of her, and sadly found out the truth that the young lady succumbed to the plague herself. Very sad indeed.
This is the graves of George Darby, who died on the 4th of July 1666, and his daughter Mary, aged 20, who died on the 4th of September 1666. George's wife survives and died in 1674. That's another female that survived rather than the male, which seems to be a pattern. And these are the Lingate graves. You've just phoned me. Have you phoned me? Oh.
1588 these troughs were built. They're called the Ever Troughs, possibly from the meaning of always or never fail. The top trough, this big one, was for horses, but the bottom one is put for dogs and other animals. 1588. I'd say they were 2023. The Ever Troughs. Beautiful view of the old market hall. So a beautiful view, but not of the blue Portaloo. That just swells a good eyesight, that, doesn't it? That was a lovely wee trip round Eyam.
Yep.
Few graves, few poignant buildings.
Yeah.
Beautiful
Quite
village,
interesting.
absolutely
Yeah, lovely.
gorgeous village. If you're ever around North Derbyshire and you fancy a wee trip out, Eyam's
Worth
a
a
nice
visit.
place. We was going to go in the museum,
But
£4 to get in
and it's
per
very big.
person, it's not a massive place. So I'm not going to pay £4 being a tight
Yorkshire.
Yorkshireman, that's the one. Tyke.
Yeah, tight.
So we're going to end this video here.
We are.
So till next time, I'll see you next one. J Art,
Fill out. Keep trekking.
Trek on. See you again.
See you again.
Oh no, what do you think it was left £4?
No.
Nah. See you again.
See you.